Mr. Clarkson, how are you feeling about the protest?
Can farming survive in this country, Jeremy?
I don't know, I'll go and have a look at this crowd.
Jeremy, a message for Starmer? Exactly.
Hi everyone, Niall Paterson here with the Sky News Daily, and on what is clearly the coldest and wettest day of the year, we've decided to leave the studio, head down to Whitehall. The reason? Many farmers have gathered here, bringing a little bit of the country to the city, protesting against Rachel Reeves' budget. Now, the Chancellor announced back then changes to inheritance tax that many farmers feel could bring the industry domestically to its knees. Just a little later, we will be speaking to our business correspondent, Paul Kelso. He'll try and explain exactly why so many farmers, just looking around, thousands of them are quite so irate. Just to give you a flavour of what we are seeing here, there is, close to the cenotaph, a big yellow tractor. We've got the world's biggest collection of wellies and wax jackets that I've ever seen. And as you can hear, there are plenty of people here wanting to make themselves heard.
This inheritance tax, it's a major blow to our industry, sort of thing, and I'm at an age where I'm getting quite worried about it now, because basically, if I don't gift a farm away now and live 7 years, we've got a huge tax bill to pay, and basically we end up selling land to pay the tax bill. If something isn't done now, I think it's the end of the road, and I think unless they can import all the food, you'll see food very shortly. Yeah.
You personally will be affected by this?
Or my son. Basically, I wouldn't be paying, it'd be my son, the next generation. That's the problem. We've created almost a monster for my son to take over, haven't we, really? Unwillingly, because we've sort of built the business up, hoping we could pass it on, and the goalposts have been moved, and now we've put our children in a position.
The government says that this affects a tiny fraction of total farms.
That is rubbish. This £1 million business, I know, I can go round our yard at home, got tractors probably if I went around the yard, we got machinery on the yard which feed the livestock, tractors, combine harvesters which do the work. We're very close to that £1 million mark without starting on the land.
It's not just the land, it's the stock and the machinery, it all adds into it, so you go over $1 million very, very easily.
Yeah. All along the line, they've worked for that farm. We've paid for it. We've worked for it always. It's going to be yours one day, lad. This is for you. And now, it breaks your heart, because we're all going to be left with a massive bill, which they're going to have to pay.
Do you think you'll be able to survive this?
No, I don't. It's sad. It's really sad, We work so hard. We don't have a wage. We work. We put everything back in. That's why food's cheap to the public.
All the hours, have no time off.
No,
we're lucky we've come now because the sun's farming for us.
They've left them at home. But through COVID, NHS were fantastic. But people mustn't forget, farmers were fantastic too. We fed the nation when everybody was on its knees. We didn't have a day off, and it's a passion,
Good support. Our son will be sixth generation at our farm. Sixth generation. And the people before us have worked extremely hard to get that farm, protect it, and go down the family lines. And now this lot want to ruin it for us.
But like your average farm, your family farm now is well over £1 million. You only got to look at what you've got in the yard, what you need to be doing the farming, the tools that you need. You start adding all that up. It's not rocket science. I don't know where they're getting the figures from, but they're not being advised properly. They need to come and try and do the job and see how bloody hard it is, and then they would know. Yeah, then they would know. 7 days a week.
They won't be coming out of their gilded offices, let alone put a pair of wellies on.
What do you say to those who say, why? Why should farming be a special case? Why should farmers not have to pay in the way that the rest of us have to on death?
The problem with the values of the land is we don't see the land having that value. It's acres to us. It's our tools. We need them acres to make a living. To produce food. So
we don't gamble like the hedge fund guys and the kind of people with a lot of money. We're not in it to gamble to make a quick buck. We've done this for generations. We've fed the country for generations, and now it's this tax is kind of like the final straw.
What then do you guys think about those who've perhaps brought the spotlight on this aspect of inheritance tax, the Dysons of this world, even the Jeremy Clarksons, who have used this as a means of securing money for their kids?
If they're getting income from other sources other than agricultural, surely there must be a way the government can target them without targeting us.
Just having a quick look, we're in the middle of the protest at the moment, and it's the signs that are leaping out to me. One over there, no farms. no food security, no farm, no food. We produce, you reduce. And there's quite an amusing one right in front of me, stuck farmer. I think they've moved the letters around in that one a little bit. What's your name?
Tom Jewson, I'm 14.
Tom, nice to meet you. What is so catastrophic about this plan?
The inheritance tax is one of the main things that a lot of farmers are quite angry about. You know, this 20% that a lot of farmers, farmers are mostly asset rich, not money rich, and it's going to be a very big struggle for farmers to pay out so much money to the government, and it's going to ruin a lot of family farms, and a lot of farmers are going to lose a lot of land.
What's your kind of personal circumstances?
Yeah, so we have a family farm in County Durham, and I will be the 6th generation of the family farm, and we're a small farm, but we're still over that threshold, so it's still going to come at a cost to us. My dad has fought for all his life. He's paid off all this money to inherit this farm, but because it's not in his name, he's going to have to pay this inheritance tax, and it's going to affect our family massively.
So why is it farming as a career for you?
I've loved it ever since I was a child. Being brought up on a farm, it was a great experience. It's been absolutely great. The countryside is a lovely place, and everywhere's just so nice, and it's a brilliant job, and I've always loved it growing up around it.
Edward, we were just chatting to your son there. I mean, this is obviously something that's been in the family for years, and just listening to your lad talking about the future with such enthusiasm, I mean, that must make you very, very proud.
Very proud indeed, and so that's the reason we're here, because the policy that's been proposed in terms of the tax will effectively mean a small farm like ours will have to be sold off, or parts of it, which mean our capability to produce British food is diminished. And if this happens on a grand scale right across the UK, it is catastrophic for the general public. And I think people must realise that. Yeah.
So just in the way that this is going to go, does it mean, if Labour doesn't U-turn on this, does it mean basically every generation the farm will shrink?
This means that a part of the farm will be diminished. So as we go further down the generations, ultimately we'll end up with nothing. That's the point of this, yeah.
No farmers! No farmers! No farmers!
Do you know the best thing about coming along to gigs like this is you bump into colleagues that you haven't seen in a while. Dan Whitehead, our West of England and Wales correspondent, you've been covering this story for quite some time now. I mean, I have to admit, what has really surprised me is the level of frustration and anger on display.
Yeah, I mean, we had the big protest with tractors down here, outside Downing Street back in March, and that anger has been building. This protest today is not just about the inheritance tax, that's the big reason, but they are angry about cheaper food imports, about mislabelling, just about the British industry in the countryside not being respected and farmers being squeezed and squeezed. That's how they're feeling.
Do you get the impression that they think this government is ripe for a U-turn, that there is the possibility of change? Because I have to say, I'm not so sure they are.
Right now, the government is digging its heels in, isn't it? It is not looking like it is going to do a U-turn. I've been asking the farmers today, if that's the case, what's next? And one of them told me, just as we were having a chat with Jeremy Clarkson, he said, watch this space, and next time may not be as peaceful. That's the message. Now, the farmers are very sensitive about that. They don't want the British public to turn, but I think they've got the backing of them, and I think next time you could potentially see protests a bit more like we see elsewhere in the continent, like the French and like the German farmers, where things are a little bit more violent, the burning of tyres, the spreading of slurry.
You mentioned a man I think many people have come along to see today, Jeremy Clarkson, and oh, there he is, in fact, just coming through the crowd. What do you make of him?
A lot of farmers say he has done more for farmers than the NFU and any other programme. Let's see if we can have a quick word there. I want to.
Mr. Clarkson, how are you feeling about the protest?
Can farming survive in this country, Jeremy?
I don't know, I'll go and have a look at this crowd.
Jeremy, a message for Starmer? Exactly.
I mean, he is a superstar in the farming world, and a lot of farmers...
Remind people why that is.
Well, obviously he's got this huge documentary, and a lot of farmers say that has done more to inform the public of what the struggles really are for farmers than the NFU have done in 30 years, and I've heard that from many farmers. He's just been able to get that message out in what is a very complicated industry. These are the problems, because he's been experiencing it firsthand, and he's got the money to survive. It's, he's not really on the breadline.
But isn't that part of the problem with this protest, that people like Jeremy Clarkson saw farming as a means of securing money for their future? They saw a loophole and they've taken advantage of it. James Dyson as well.
That's what the government say, that this is all about closing that loophole, and look, there may be an element of that, but on the other side of it, I think genuinely he has highlighted those problems about farming. And whether or not it's a loophole for him, there may well be some of that. He would say that's not the case.
He rushes past us and straight onto the stage. Let's have a listen to Mr. Clarkson, eh?
So we have all of this complication and all of this cost, and there's very, very little money in it. Very little money, as you know. And then we got the budget. Now, I know a lot of people all across the country in all walks of life took a bit of a kick on the shin with that budget. You lot got a knee in the nuts and a light hammer blow to the back of the head. Because we had pickup trucks, double cab pickup trucks, being reclassified as company cars. 211% tax rise there. £50 carbon tax on a bag of fertiliser. The basic farm payments altered in such a way that we're getting a lot less than we thought we were going to get. And then there was the inheritance tax business. Honestly, I don't know where to start. I know you've heard a lot about it today, and I'm not going to dwell on that. I will just say this. Rachel Reeves has told us, 72% of farms are going to be unaffected by this.
And as the speaker following him said, that man has done more for British farming than anyone else. You'd think with this accent that I'd be able to cope with the cold and the rain a little bit better than these soft southerners, but no, absolutely not. I think it's time for us to head back to the studio, to the warmth, and find our business correspondent and find out exactly what the issues are here. Well, that is us indoors from the cold, the rain, and all the farmers. In front of me, our business correspondent, Paul Kelso. Good to see you.
And you, I've got the dry end of the story. Hopefully this won't be too dry to listen to.
Yeah, let's endeavour to make it a little bit more interesting, because there are only two certainties in this life: death and me not understanding taxes. So explain exactly what Rachel Reeves has done to inheritance tax that is, as I've just seen firsthand, literally incensed the farming community.
Inheritance tax wasn't a certainty for farmers. Isn't right now, but it will be, thanks to what Rachel Reeves is planning. She's planning to impose inheritance tax at 20%, so that's half the rate that private citizens pay when they pass on estates, payable over 10 years, which is also more favourable than ordinary inheritance tax, and she'll do it above certain income thresholds that will be introduced for the first time since the 80s. So currently, and since 1984, farmers have had no inheritance tax due passing on their estates, and that's a function of two reliefs as they're known. 100% relief. 100% relief means no tax. Two categories: agricultural property relief, which covers land and farm buildings, and business property relief, which covers produce, livestock, machinery on farms. So at the moment, anything claimed under that is 100% relief. What's going to happen from 2026 is those two categories, and this is important, will be lumped together, agriculture and business relief, and there'll be £1 million for every farmer, another £500,000 effectively under the reliefs that everybody gets under inheritance tax, 325,000 plus a top up to £500,000 if a home is involved. That's £1.5 million if it is a jointly owned farm with a couple who are married passing it on. That's £3 million before any tax is due.
That sounds an awful lot of money. What is the government saying in terms of the numbers?
If you look at estates that are worth more than £1 million, there are in total 462 claims in the most recent year.
There were more than 462 people outside the Prime Minister's house a few minutes ago.
There are more than 462 farmers. That's a number of people where estates have passed on. So that's deaths, effectively, not to put too fine a point on it. Now, the proportion of farms they made up, that's about 27% of farms worth more than £1 million based on the claims, the actual claims that were made. So that's a quarter of farms.
So it's a significant proportion.
Yeah. In England, about 100,000 farms. It's quite a lot. It's a significant amount. The National Farmers Union say it's misleading, and they use figures from DEFRA, department that looks after farming, and their numbers, looking at their net worth of farms, say that 49% of farms are worth more than £1.5 million. So that's twice as many farms that could be affected. Now, that difference is where the argument is now. And the reason why this is so pivotal about where your income level falls is it's the bundling together of the land, which has a certain value and no one doubts that, but throwing in all that business relief as well. If you've got £500,000 on a brand new combine harvester, well, you're halfway there already. And the bundling of those together, the farmers say the government is only choosing one half of the relief to come up with these numbers, and that's where the discrepancy lies.
Why is the government doing this in the first place?
They're doing it because, remember that phrase 100% relief? When you hear the phrase 100% relief, tax lawyers' eyes light up. Anything that offers 100% tax relief attracts money. And if you are looking to shelter wealth entirely legitimately from the tax man, farming is a great option. Over the last 3 years, the people who buying land, the proportion of people who classify themselves as farmers has dropped below 50% over the last 3 years. In the first 3 quarters of this year, it's just 31% of farmers are buying farmland. So who's buying the rest? Well, it is a mixture of lifestyle farmers, think Clarkson, it's private investors, think Dyson, and it is institutional investors. So 70% of farmland is being bought by people who aren't family farmers, but they are one way and another investing in farmland. It's a attractive asset to invest in for lots of reasons, but farming does not make money. So Jeremy Clarkson, who said he was attracted by the tax benefits of buying that farm.
I've got the quote here. Land is a better investment than any bank can offer. The government doesn't get any of my money when I die, and the price of the food that I grow can only go up.
You can't knock it. It's completely true. The problem, as he found, is when he first owned the farm, he leased it and someone else ran it, couldn't turn a profit. Look at the amount of money farms make. 2022-23, the average profit was just under £100,000. Last year, which was a dreadful one on farms, it was less than £50,000. And this is average, remember. If you're landed with a £1 million inheritance tax bill, even over 10 years, that's £100,000 a year. It doesn't add up. So that is where the argument is, that the only way to pay this off will be to sell land. And that's where the, quotes, death of the family farm comes from.
On the one hand, as you say, people were complaining to us with one voice that this is the end of the family farm. One father and son that I spoke to, their farm in County Durham has been in the family for 6 generations, and they think that this could well be the end of it. But I suppose that the other take in all of this is why? Why should farming be a special case? Why, when the rest of us, if you're lucky enough to exceed those thresholds, you pay 40% and you don't get given 10 years to come up with the cash? The taxman comes knocking on your door a lot earlier than that.
Clearly, there'd be a lot of sympathy for farmers who have had businesses in the family for as long as those you talk about. But the argument in favour of farmers is they aren't ordinary inheritances like our family homes. They are businesses. The counter to that is there are all sorts of business taxes that aren't applying here. We talked about land going up in value. Well, ordinarily, if you're selling land that's gone up in value, there's a capital gains tax to pay. That doesn't happen in these cases. That phrase, family farms, has got some emotional meaning and is perhaps short on definition and clear definition, because ultimately this is about where you set the line. Where do you draw the line in terms of the value of estates? And you say at that point you are wealthy enough that you should be sharing some for the national good. And below that, you are serving the national good by feeding it.
And I'm wondering if maybe that, as an argument, is more effective for the farmers. Without us, what are you going to eat? Without us, you are reliant on chains of production that sometimes don't reach all the way to the United Kingdom at the time you want them, with the quality that you want.
Food security, again, it's a very emotive sense. At this time of year, I mean, there is not a lot being produced by farms by virtue of a Northern Hemisphere winter. And the UK has not been 100% food self-sufficient for decades, possibly centuries. There's an argument that the Straits of Dover, as we talked about during Brexit, are more important to our food security, or as important than what we produce ourselves. But it is a strong argument, and clearly we want food produced as close as possible to where we eat it. But we also have to accept, and I think many people do, that the days of filling your plate from something that was grown by a horny-handed son of toil at the end of three. You know, the Archers is a fiction. Clearly, domestic farming is crucial, and much of it can only be made to operate sustainably by big farms with business investment. But it's certainly a powerful argument. I wonder, actually, if the real question we should be asking here is not, is inheritance tax fair, but how can we make farming pay? Because it plainly doesn't.
When an industry requires subsidy to work, that is not an industry that can survive in the long term, surely.
Well, it's a fact of life for farming, and it's been the backdrop here is Brexit and a subsidy regime that wasn't perfect, but was established and well known and did lead to particular kinds of farming. The bottom line is it is not delivering the revenues, certainly that the work of the people you're talking to today are putting in. Does that justify a free pass on inheritance tax that's going to go into the pot the rest of us are potentially going to pay for? Discuss.
Paul, thanks very much indeed. And that's a lot for this edition of The Daily. For much, much more on the farming crisis and indeed those changes to inheritance tax, just head to skynews.com. We'll see you again, same time tomorrow.